The county agrees to pay out more than $400,000 to settle 2 sexual misconduct claims against a sheriff's deputy this week. And offers have been made on claims by 13 other women. No more ladies' night? Recent lawsuits could put the kibosh on women's-only events in San Diego. And a look at the race to replace Governor Jerry Brown as his tenure as the state's longest-serving governor winds down. I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer. And joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today, Ben Adler, Capitol Bureau Chief for Capitol Public Radio, Amitha Sharma, KPBS investigative reporter Mari Payton of NBC 7 News San Diego, and watchdog reporter Jeff McDonald of the San Diego Union Tribune. Well, 2 of more than a dozen women with claims of sexual misconduct against a county sheriff's deputy settled their cases this week. The county agreed to pay $412,000 to the 2 women, with many more settlements being teed up now. So, Jeff, start with the accusations against ex-deputy Richard Fisher. And first of all, is he an ex-deputy or is he technically on leave at this point?
He is technically an employee of the San Diego Sheriff's Department.
Okay, but there are these civil complaints we're referencing, plus a criminal charge.
Yes, the civil complaints started piling up last fall after some women reported him coming to their homes and groping him during routine law enforcement contacts. One of the women got a lawyer and filed a claim against the county. That got an investigation going. The investigation took some months. First he was put on desk duty, then he was put on paid leave. He's now on unpaid leave, but he's still an employee, and he's been charged with 14 separate counts, I think 8 felonies of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, things like that.
Okay. Are there a range of the allegations here against this deputy?
Yes. As I say, there are 8 felonies, I think 5 misdemeanors and 1 infraction, maybe. I'm getting mixed up on those details. But yeah, he's exposed himself allegedly. He's groped women. He's assaulted women to varying degrees. So that is a criminal case that's pending in Superior Court. He's out on bail. The civil cases have all been handled by one lawyer. He said he's received settlement offers from 15 of the clients. 2 of them have accepted. The others he feels are not high enough to warrant being accepted.
Okay. And Amitha, you interviewed 4 of the accusers here at KPBS. We're going to play a clip here now from that interview, and these were anonymous interviews, right?
At the time, yes.
Okay. Here's that bite.
He caught me at my lowest point. I had just had my house burglarized, and my husband was out of the country. He knew that, so I was alone. And you know, like I said before, if he would have come to my house without a uniform, I never would have let him in. But it was because he had his uniform on, and he was representing, you know, someone that's supposed to protect you. I felt safe.
So, Amitha, how did these women say they were affected? Of course, as we say, the allegations are against a deputy. Offenses are under color of authority, as they say.
Well, I mean, we all call police when we're in a state of distress or we need some kind of help, and that's how a majority of these 15 women cross paths with Deputy Fisher. So one of the women really stands out for me. Her name is CP, or she's described as CP, and she's one of the 2 women who settled so far. She said that she reached out to the Sheriff's Department after her boyfriend had threatened to ram his car through her garage. So Deputy Fisher, along with another deputy, arrives at her place, and then he comes back after they've left. He comes back a little bit later, and she's on edge. She's sad. She's vulnerable. So she opens the door because, again, he's already been there. She trusts him. He's got a badge. He's got a gun. And then he allegedly sexually misbehaves with her. And she said, he scared me so badly that I will never let an officer in my home again. So I'd say overall, the women whom I spoke with said, we've lost confidence in the Sheriff's Department. We've lost confidence in police. So the other question of this that's connected to this is, what does this mean for the sheriff's department if you've lost trust? I mean, granted, it's among a small group of people, but you've lost trust nonetheless. How do you regain it?
And all of it, of course, publicized, and they are making offers, as you noted in your story, Jeff, to these other women. The county isn't battling this.
Well, they are, as far as the dollars go.
They're negotiating.
Yes, they're negotiating. It's a terrible case. They. A lot of the victims, they established a pattern where he would come back, he would sort of threaten them and say, I'll be watching you, I know where you live, and I'll be coming to check on you. So it was a real pattern of almost exploitation and harassment.
And the other part of this that we can't talk about too much because nobody has told us anything differently, but one has to wonder who else in the department knew. I mean, you go out in pairs when you're deputies, when you're officers, and officers talk, they see things. I mean, they're investigators, they're trained observers. They see things, they notice things, they hear things. What was known about him before any of this came to light, became public?
Now, Fisher, as you note, he's out on bail now regarding the criminal cases. Has he had any public response to the allegations?
No. His lawyer has denied. He pleaded not guilty to all charges. His lawyer had said they look forward to vigorously defending his client, and that's it. I reached out to him multiple times before and after the arraignment, and no response whatever. So we'll see how that goes.
Now, there's a political aspect to all of this because, of course, it is election year. Sheriff Bill Gore is up for re-election, and this case could be a factor. And, Jeff, you did a story earlier in the year on Gore having his opponent, Sheriff's Commander Dave Myers, reprimanded for talking to some of the alleged victims. Tell us the background on that
Yes, there's
story.
no love lost between the sheriff and his challenger. According to Commander Myers, he was being retaliated against for running against his boss in the June election. All he was doing, according to him, is reaching out to constituents, would-be constituents, and seeing what, if anything, he could do if and when he's elected sheriff. The sheriff took a different view of the approach and decided he may have been interfering with an ongoing investigation and jeopardizing the county's legal position, both criminally and civilly, and told him to stop.
So you wound up writing a report about that, but...
Then he got written up the next day after he told some reporters about what had happened, so he got written up twice.
So we can expect a continued kind of nasty campaign as this plays into the
Yes.
election. How much of an issue do you think the overall sexual misconduct case will be in the campaign? You would think it would it's on Gore's watch.
I know it's upcoming in a lot of the conversations he's having and the meetings he's having, and his answer is that, look, this is a bad apple. We do our best to root him out. We have a process to go through because law enforcement officers have safeguards. That's why he's still, I don't want to say on the payroll, but he's still in the department as an employee, although he doesn't go to work and he's not being paid. So he's done his best, and he sees it as a success that they've gotten rid of a bad officer. Of course, the critics and the victims see otherwise and think the county dragged its feet for months before arresting the guy because he was a police officer.
And how much will that play into the settlement negotiations? The fact that it, in many people's eyes, took a long time.
It's unclear. When they settle, we don't get a lot of the details that would come out like at trial or in discovery. So the settlement, it may be good for the victims and good for them for winning some money, but it does deprive the community of key information about who might have known what, as you were saying.
So, but I know that this is boilerplate in settlements. When government agencies are sued and they settle, they don't acknowledge any kind of wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. What's your sense about what the victims, the alleged victims, want from the county in terms of an admission and acknowledgement?
I think that it would probably vary from victim to victim depending on the extremity of their damages and how badly they were shaken by the incidents. On the other hand, I'm pretty confident they're not going to get an apology. They'll get some money.
All right. We are going to move on, and we will look for further reporting on that and the rest of these settlements and see what happens there and how much money it adds up to. Well, gender discrimination has been an issue in America since the dawn of the Republic. After all, women didn't even get the right to vote till 1920. But the story today is about men who say they're victims of discrimination by women. And Mari, this is a provocative story. Start with the the case here of Mandy Rodriguez. Who is she and what did she do to draw a lawsuit?
Yeah, so Mandy is a mother from Escondido. She also considers herself an entrepreneur. She goes by her other name, DJ Mandy Mixes. She's a DJ on the side, something she's really passionate about. So she holds this event. She organizes it last August 2017. And it's just supposed to be like a fun networking event for women to get together, sort of let loose, meet new friends, that sort of thing. It takes place at a hotel in Oceanside. So a man comes and he asks if he can be let in, and someone at the door supposedly, this is all according to the complaint that was filed, he was turned away and said this is only for, women, and he produced a ticket. You had to buy tickets in advance, and according to Mandy, the event had sold out weeks in advance, but he was still turned away. So he left, files a lawsuit. Gender discrimination. He said he was discriminated against because he was a man and should have been let into this event that was meant for women.
And what was the impact of this lawsuit on Mandy Rodriguez?
Yeah, I mean, it was devastating. She told me she went to a dark place. She was shocked. She said she didn't even know a lawyer. She was, like I said, a mom, an entrepreneur trying to do
DJ
something
bit on
good.
the side.
Yeah, exactly. So she didn't even know where to start. So she actually ended up calling an attorney who helped her and took the case pro bono.
And you reported on another lawsuit brought, and tell us the attorney who is filing a lot of these suits. Right?
Yeah, the attorney, Alfred Rava, he's filed 300 discrimination lawsuits, at least by his account, in the state of California. And what he's doing is he's citing this Unruh Civil Rights Act, which was originally meant to prevent discrimination against minorities, against people for their sexual orientation, their gender. It was passed in the 1950s. So what he's using is he's using that law and basically flipping it. He does say that he does represent men and women, but he's using that and sort of turning the tables, if you will, and using that. And successfully, most of the cases are settling for an undisclosed amount, but he is winning some of those cases too and getting paid out.
And you reported on another case involving Claire Wasserman, Equal Pay and Treatment for Women group. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Claire Wasserman, she's really passionate about bringing women together, especially sort of in this Me Too movement, bringing sort of a safe place where women can get together, network, learn on how to close the gender pay gap, demand a raise, be treated equally. And so she held an event at the Red Door, which is a restaurant in Mission Hills, which is pretty well known around here. And it was a ladies' networking event. And a man by the name of Rich Allison went to that event, and initially he was turned away, but he went through a side door. Again, this is all according to the court documents.
Because he really wouldn't talk to you, right?
No, neither of the men would talk to me involved in these two lawsuits. But he was turned away, but then eventually wasn't given the same drink specials as the women that were at the event. So then he also sued Claire and the Red Door. And that case, both of those cases recently settled.
Okay, and as you say, they don't really want to come forth and state their claim on television, but they're certainly filing a lot of these suits. And what's the result? Some of these are settling. I mean, they're kind of winning, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you look at the Civil Rights Act and how it was written, and that's what they're using primarily, they are, they're claiming that there's a wrong against them, and like I said, they're settling or winning in some of these cases, a lot of these cases.
But I feel like they're using this on technical grounds. I mean, they're winning, they're successful on technical grounds alone, but there is, at least it appears to be, an undercurrent of something else, that they are upset about women congregating in a particular way or being given any special favors. I mean, I'm wondering if you got a sense of that perhaps they were doing this to maybe humiliate, or they're embittered in some way about what's going on with the Me Too movement or like-minded movements.
So I can't speak for Rich Allison and Stephen Fry, the two men that filed the suit, since I didn't talk to them. But the attorney, Alfred Rava, who I spoke to over the phone and by email, and then I also interviewed another gentleman who's part of this National Coalition for Men, which we haven't mentioned. That's a group based in San Diego that they claim that they fight for equality for men and boys. They don't file lawsuits, but a lot of their members do. And Rich Allison, Stephen Fry, Al Rava have all been involved in this organization at some point.
Well, we beautifully set up a couple of clips we have here, and we'll start with the first one from that National Coalition for Men, see what he says on that.
The purpose is to get awareness out there that men's rights is important, being aware of that and helping men out. They do a lot of work with legislation. There's certain policies that aren't necessarily beneficial for men. And one way of putting it is that, you know, women may have got the short end of the stick historically in the past, and now it's kind of swung, and we have a lot of policies that tend to be anti-male.
So what are those policies?
Right. So I asked him specifically that question. Alan couldn't really talk specifically about what those policies were. His father is a lawyer who works for the Men's Legal Defense Fund, and so he sees a lot of cases, in paternity cases, where fathers are not given the same rights, according to them, as the mothers in the case. But he really couldn't give me any specifics. He talked more about how, sort of in pop culture, men are portrayed as not being able to take care of the home or take care of the kids, those sort of stereotypes. That's what he described to me. But back to your point, I really do think that these people believe that they need to do something for equality. I didn't get the sense that they felt like, you know, in terms of what's going on right now with the Me Too movement, that they felt particularly moved just at this time.
How are they suffering any damages by not being allowed into a restaurant when a group of women is having, you know, a meeting? What kind of damages? I mean, I can understand wanting to settle to make the case go away, but don't they have to establish that they've been damaged in some way to get a court win?
Well, apparently not. Apparently they're using the Civil Rights Act, and they are winning because for them it's just it's. Some of the women had told me that in their events, when they do let these men in, they don't actually come in; they walk away. So they're not necessarily wanting to be there, right?
So that's what I was trying to say. I mean, it sounds like they're sending a message. They want to send a message, and what is that message?
They want to get paid.
I mean, according that, I did ask about payments and if they were motivated by money. I asked Alan that, and he said no. He's doing it for equality.
And he moved to maybe change the law to kind of.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So Amanda Allen, who represented DJ Mandy Mixes, who took the case pro bono, she's very passionate about this and sort of has made it her mission to make some changes. And so actually, after the story aired, Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez Fletcher saw that story and contacted Amanda Allen and said that she wants to work with her possibly going forward to make amends to the law, exceptions, maybe change the wording. It's in the very beginning stages of all of that. But there is sort of this, this feeling that this was a well-intentioned law but is now being abused and used for different purposes.
All right, out of time on this segment, but it's fascinating. We'll see what happens and follow up as if that law change does take place. We're going to move on. California's current governor is behind multiple lawsuits against the Trump administration. Jerry Brown, in his last of 8 years as governor, is going out fighting, and a battle rages among those wishing to succeed him. That's the marquee race in this critical election year. And Ben Adler, tell us first, why are you down from Sacramento this week in San Diego?
Sure. Well, the California Republican Party convention is here at the Sheraton over by the airport. The Democrats held their state party convention at the convention center back in February and was down here twice. So it's been great to be down and visit your lovely city.
And great for San Diego here, all these folks coming in and spending money. Come on, we love it. So Republicans obviously have not fared well statewide in California in recent years. 2018 likely to be any different.
We're looking at an election where Democrats so far in primaries and in special elections have been more motivated than Republicans to turn out and vote, given Donald Trump being president. Oftentimes, the party out of power in the White House is more motivated to turn out in the midterms. Then you factor into that as well that Democrats continue to dominate California politics. They hold all the statewide constitutional offices, supermajorities in both chambers of the state legislature. And, you've also got just 25% or so registered California Republicans when you look at voter registration stats. So putting all of that together, Republicans are at a low point and maybe falling lower. If you look at voter registration, it's declining for them. So they've got a lot of challenges ahead of them. In particular, defending several House seats held by Republicans, including in this area, the marquee race of Darrell Iss's seat, with him retiring and a couple of Republicans and some Democrats all vying for that seat. So you've got that, several other Southern California and Central Valley congressional seats up for grabs that Republicans hold. It's a big year for Democrats on the national front trying to make gains. If so, it kind of starts in California. And Republicans have uphill battles in the state races.
And of course, we should mention the Duncan Hunter Jr. seat, and we've talked about that a lot on this show, and Jeff's done a lot of reporting, and others on his problems here with campaign finance allegations, and also that, I mean, you would never think in a very red district such as that, mostly East County and up and down North and South, but that maybe could be in play too, who knows?
Well, when you look at wave elections, as they're called, and you saw one most recently in 2010 when Republicans, propelled by the Tea Party, swept Democrats out of control in the House, and then later on in 2014, the Senate, a lot of times there's always a couple of seats in Congress that nobody expects to switch parties that are propelled there by the wave. No evidence yet necessarily that Duncan Hunter will be one, but, you know, I think Democrats would like to see that. Tom McClintock up in the Sacramento area, you know, that's not necessarily seen as a competitive race, but if this wave really picks up steam, that's someone who could go. Otherwise, you're looking at Republicans like Issa, the Ed Royce seat, he just retired from Orange County, Mimi Walters seeking re-election, and a couple of Jeff Denham and David Valadeo in the Central Valley, and one more, that'd be Steve Knight in the Palmdale area.
So it could be a lot of play in the House races. Well, let's get back to that, as I mentioned at the open, the governor's race, the big enchilada. I know there's a lot of folks, names on the ballot. We'll see as we come to vote here next month. But who are the main Democratic contenders and the main Republican ones trying to replace Brown?
Sure, I think it's fair to say there are 6 leading candidates. Certainly there will be 6 candidates at the first big debate next Tuesday. Vote by mail ballots go out on Monday. So on Tuesday, you're going to have Democrats Gavin Newsom, the lieutenant governor, former mayor of San Francisco, Antonio Villaraigosa, the former Los Angeles mayor and speaker of the California Assembly, State Treasurer John Chung, former state controller and Board of Equalization member, and Delane Eason, former assembly member and state schools chief. They're the 4 Democrats who will be at this debate. On the Republican side, there are 2 candidates, San Diego businessman John Cox and Orange County Assemblyman Travis Allen.
Okay, and John Cox was on KPBS Midday Edition this week, and he talked about a fact that marijuana users should be hospitalized, and it was a controversial position. He stated it publicly, and then he said on KPBS, well, no, I never said that. He actually was on video saying it, said it to the Union Tribune editorial board. It just brings me to the question of, are we in a post-facts era now where candidates can flat out deny things they're recorded saying?
We've seen some questions about that at the national level, and you're certainly seeing some candidates try to channel Donald Trump. I think Travis Allen has taken some of Trump's positions on the sanctuary state law and and other themes that the president has talked about. The goal being to win enough support among Republican primary voters to advance to the general election. But let's remember, we've got this odd system in California.
The jungle primary.
Yeah, so the top 2 finishers in the June 5th primary, regardless of political party, advance to the November general election. Gavin Newsom is seen as the frontrunner according to polls. So the question is, will he face off against another Democrat? If so, most likely Villaraigosa or Chung, if you look at the polls, or a Republican. And Cox has kind of snuck into second place in some recent polling. If it's a Democrat and a Republican in the runoff, in a state like California, liberally controlled right now, and in an election where, as we mentioned, the turnout likely to skew a little more Democratic than it might otherwise, we could have a race essentially decided in June if a Republican advances along with Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom even told me in an interview that we ran this week on Capitol Public Radio that he hoped he would face a Republican, and he's out today with a TV ad attacking John Cox, the Republican. You might say, well, why? Why is he, he's a front runner. Why is he the first candidate putting out an attack ad? It's pretty sneaky. He's trying to, or I should say clever. Sneaky could have a negative connotation. He's trying to introduce voters subtly to John Cox so that Republicans are going to be like, oh, he's the Republican who's, in this race, and so I'm going to, vote for him. And that could coalesce Republican support.
How does John Cox counteract that?
No, Cox is probably okay with that.
Yeah.
He'll take him on in November.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cox wants to advance, and the ad is basically saying John Cox...
He's helping him.
Yeah, John Cox is attacking Gavin Newsom on guns, and John Cox supports the NRA. Well, Cox does support the NRA. He would probably be pretty okay with this. And at the same time, you've got House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy endorsing John Cox, which is big. He's hoping that Cox advances to the runoff too, because all these congressional seats we talked about. If there are 2 Democrats running for governor in November, will Republican voters turn out? He doesn't think they will quite as much, and he would then worry about that low Republican turnout affecting his congressional colleagues. So here's some irony. The number 2 Republican in the House of Representatives, who is potentially in line to be the next Speaker of the House if Republicans hold on to control, has the same goal as Gavin Newsom for the June 5th primary.
The leading Democrat.
Yeah, that it's Gavin Newsom and John Cox moving on to November.
But Gavin Newsom is willing to take that risk in terms of Democratic outcomes in the election by doing what he's doing.
Oh, for the congressional races?
Yeah.
Well, I think Gavin Newsom, first of all, I think Gavin Newsom would probably say he thinks Democrats are going to do quite well in the congressional races, regardless of who's at the top of the ticket. I think he's looking toward his race and saying, who do I have the best shot of beating in November? A Republican. He'd probably have a better shot at beating Travis Allen. John Cox has a lot of money and has shown he's not afraid to put his own money into the race.
Well, we're going to see what happens and have fun covering the election, and we're glad you're in Sacramento.
Yeah.
It's going to all be interesting. It's a great election year. That does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Ben Adler of Capital Public Radio, Amitha Sharma of KPBS News, Mari Payton of NBC 7 News San Diego, and Jeff McDonald of the San Diego Union Tribune. Reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for being with us today, and join us again next week on the Roundtable.